our karakia, please.
Aye.
Did
everyone have their cards?
I got my card.
Damn.
Kia ora mai tātou, I tēnei rangi, tēnei te mihi mahana. To start our karakia, we'll be doing whakataka, so please join in and mute yourself so that we don't jump around screens. Rick, can you mute yourself and Rex, please?
Yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that.
Me noi, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te ātakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. Cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south. Let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened ear, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. Māori ora.
Thank you, Henny Wyatt. That was very good. And welcome to everybody. And welcome also to any guests who are watching through that process. This is a open council meeting. Apologies. Do we have apology for lateness from Charlie? We don't. We'll just let that. He'll turn up, I imagine. Could be having some problems with the internet, like I was. Do we have any notices? We have no notices. Any conflict of interest declarations?
Just one, Chairman. That is item 6.
Yeah. Yeah, how are we going to handle that? Do you want to stay for that discussion, or do you want to leave for that discussion?
I'd like to comment on that agenda item.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
That is staying.
Well, yes, I can hop out of some part of if that is the case.
But if it's a conflict of interest that's been declared, how can you comment on them?
Well, because I have to be quite honest, there's been no actual consultation. Is that good enough?
We'll just leave that.
That's a process matter, but that doesn't deal with the conflict of interest.
Correct. Then I can't discuss that. But how can you discuss it when you don't know there hasn't been any consultation unless I tell you?
I agree with Mike too, Rex. There's some kōrero within that paper. Yeah, there wasn't any consultation with the Māori committee itself. There's the report's been written, but you haven't asked what we do in the background. It's presumed we do nothing else but attend the hui. We do consult with our people quite often, and we're answerable to them. That hasn't been considered. I go out and visit sites. Mike must be the same. I get people contacting me, telling us about environmental issues. There's quite a lot of work behind what we do as well.
Yeah, I know, I get that.
They are Māori committee members, it's not considered.
Yeah.
We're just as busy.
I thought in the paper, we won't get to this now. I guess there's a certain conflict because you're a recipient of the money.
Correct.
That's the conflict. When we get to the paper, because I thought, and I read it this morning, that there had been consultation with the chair at the time. I mean, it's been a long process.
Of the time.
Mr. Chair, we all discussed our remuneration quite happily. I'm just wondering if Mike and Michelle wouldn't be able to comment and then bug out of the following discussion. I don't see that as being inconsistent with all of the general guidance on managing conflicts of interest that have been disclosed, in the same way a councillor might mention a conflict, make a comment and then leave the room or leave the table.
Yeah, actually, Rick, you had a thought on that?
Well, firstly, to correct Martin on a technical point, we've never discussed our remuneration ourselves. It's set for us, it's just simply handed out. There's no point in us discussing it. The only thing we discuss is how the number of chairs we have, and therefore the apportionment of that's a metric that goes through. But as for conflicts of interest, if there is a conflict of interest, the general rule is you do not participate in any part of the discussion unless the conflict has been clearly identified and is a clear process for managing it. And Mike's raised a different point, actually. Mike is saying the paper is unfit for us to consider because there's been no consultation, which is a completely different point, the one I have every sympathy with.
Let's raise that when we get to the paper, Mike. Is that is your point? Okay. We will move to call for minor items not on the agenda. Are there any? Look, I need to widen this up, don't I, so I can see everybody. So a nice clear hand up like that if you want to speak. Are there any minor items? That's Neil.
Mr. Chair, have you done the minutes yet?
No, I haven't. Confirmation of the minutes last meeting. Thanks, Neil.
You're having a shocker, Chair.
Having a shocker. We'll go back to item 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting on the 15th. Hopefully you've all read them. Do we have any comments on the minutes? No comments. Do we have a mover? Sheriff will move. Seconder, it'll be Craig. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are accepted. Thank you. Now we'll move to 4, Neil. Is that, do you have your hand up for a minor item or just to correct the chair?
No, just to correct your chairmanship.
Okay, that's good then. Any other minor items? Nobody? Oh, that's a first. Right, then we'll move straight to decision item number 5, which is in your first set. Okay. Now, was this you, James? Was it? Down here.
Good morning, councillors. I'll defer to Jess on this one.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't you. It was Jess. Is Jess here? Right, Jess?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So any questions for Jess on this? Or do you want to talk to the paper or do you want to go straight to questions, Jess?
So this paper was, I think we had a brief discussion about this last week, although I had some sound problems and you couldn't hear me. So we're asking you to effectively cancel the planned consultation on the remission of penalties for this rating year, and that we will bring back to you a broader policy for consideration as part of the revisit of the 2021 annual plan, which will have probably a broader set of postponement and remission considerations.
Yes, that's right. That's what the paper is about. Questions? Craig?
Thanks, Jess. So just in a nutshell there, it's so our intent to re-examine the increase for the coming year, re-examine that as per our earlier resolutions is still very much on the table. This is all about process and trying to make that fit the various requirements we have. But the council's intent for deferring the 7.8 or 7.3 increase next year is still alive and well, and you're just advising us the best way to put that into play.
That's right. This proposing to change the date of collection of the rates for this financial year, but this specific consultation doesn't take into account any of the recent events or the effects of COVID-19 or the drought. We'll bring you a proposal which is broader for your consideration as part of the annual plan process.
Any other questions? There are none. Do we have a mover for this paper? It's essentially 1 point and point 3. Thank you, Rick. Moved and second, Jerif. Do you wish to speak, Rick? Jerif? Okay, anyone else wish to speak? If not, we'll move the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 with an emphasis on 3. All those in favour? Aye. It's moved unanimously. Thank you. Right, we're at item 6 now. We're at item 6, and it is written by, so the person Joanne and Patty's not with us, and James. So James, you might be, or Joe. First, James, we'll go to you. Just in line with the comments from Tangata Whenua.
Sure. Well, look, the paper itself and its fullest extent certainly hasn't been consulted with the co-chairs or the members of the Māori committee. And if the expectation had been that that would be the case, then I apologise. It was drafted with a belief that we did have an understanding of the issues and positions, and that was for several reasons. The first of which is that the paper proposes some adjustments on the review recommendations that were made by Mr. Shannon when he undertook that review a couple of years ago, and consultation at that time did occur with both Mr. Paku and Mr. Mohi, as noted in that document. Subsequent to that, there had been a conversation with both of the co-chairs that I had, in which they indicated that they felt that a councillor salary split between them was an appropriate level, so we had incorporated that option into the paper. So from my perspective, I was under the impression I had the opinion of both Mr. Paku and Ms. McElroy in drafting the options, and the base option, which was modifying the recommendations of Mr. Shannon's report, was one that was based on consultation at that time as well. So look, there may have been expectation with a higher degree of consultation on this. Look, clearly it is a question for council, and when we've previously raised the issues of remuneration, both with Māori Standing Committee and Regional Planning Committee, the view had been that that it would be council to make those decisions, and that to some extent they didn't want to participate in the setting of those rates. So we've been walking a bit of a tightrope between ensuring that we're consulting, we're informed, but we're also doing this very much in the council space and not in the committee space. So look, if the general view is that a greater level of consultation is required, then the paper can lie on the table. It's not urgent, because we can back pay any changes that are made subsequently, if that's the preference. Otherwise, from my perspective, there should be enough within the paper to arrive at a decision today, unless there are matters which we are unaware of or haven't covered.
Okay, thank you, James. Mike, I need to go back to you because it's really your decision whether you think there has or has not been enough consultation with the current Tangata Whenua reps, and whether you collectively want this paper withdrawn so you can have a bit of a talk about it further.
Look, I absolutely agree with the position that the James has taken, and that my advice would be to leave the paper sitting on the table at this stage. We can always come back and address it at a later date. Although, yes, the subject was raised at our one meeting where we've been able to raise it, it was just, what is the position? So I took the view, well, here's your starting position of your previous chair. So somewhere north and south of that is where we're going to end up. That's as far as the conversation ever got, because we had to understand that there was to be a further conversation somewhere along the line. Just what are the fact that we have co-chairs instead of a single chair, the fact that we realise that there's benefits to having co-chairs. We get to cover off the south plus the north. We understood with the retirement of our previous chair, Mike Mohi, it was an opportunity to reset the parameters of the role of chair. I think those are discussions that kind of needed to happen, and they would have kind of helped give us guidance of where that remuneration should sit. When I look at the recommendations, it's the range of recommendations there is huge. Anywhere from 31,000 down to $600 per meeting. So, you know, there's a huge gap between those two, north and south of those recommendations. And I think it would have been helpful of council if they knew that there had been a conversation that had taken place and some sort of agreement that a recognition between both parties as to what the role involved. I do note the paper. It has the required information in there. I just think it's been decoupled slightly, in that the role of the chair is very specific to, in regards to the engagement with council in a very council setting, but has no recognition of the chair's role outside of that council setting. It does so for the members, but not for the chair. And I think that's why the conversation is needed. Hope that was helpful.
It wasn't helpful to me, actually, to be honest. But I'm really keen that we can't go forward if you are unhappy with both those options, and I think we just need to have further discussion on it. So I think that we do leave the paper on the table. But having said that, we do need James.
Chair, I'm wondering whether withdrawing the paper would be a more appropriate route, because that would enable us to revise the paper as opposed to have it reconsidered in its current form at a later date. Sounds to me like there's information that Mr. Parker would like us to incorporate. So if you're comfortable with that, I suggest withdrawing it. We'll go away, we'll do some consultation, we'll bring a revised paper with some new material in it for consideration at the next possible meeting.
Before I come to you, Api, what will be essential, James, is that over the next month, because we do want this resolved. You know, these things go on and on and on. I want this resolved. So I want intense negotiation and discussion with Mike and Michelle, especially, and perhaps Api too. Rick, I'll come to you, but Api had his hand up. So I'm happy to withdraw, but so I don't want lengthy dissertations on this, Api. If you've got a quick point, and then I'll go to you, Rick, to a quick point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. I will make it very quick. I just want to acknowledge, given that I normally am quite vocal around how we address remuneration, I would like to acknowledge James and the staff's effort around formulating this paper to date. There has been consultation. The presence of Mike, Michelle and myself at the table is just another example of where comms perhaps needs to be reinforced, and so our presence here today is another example of staff and tangata whenua engagement learning to improve and re-engage. And I have huge sympathy for staff and tangata whenua around trying to get to a resolution around setting remuneration, given that the report itself indicates limitations in the assumptions that James talked about. And it's very hard to put a framework in place when there are assumptions within the document that we're building that conversation off. So I welcome the opportunity as suggested by Chief Executive to remove that from the agenda and for us to re-engage with it. And I thank you for the opportunity to express some support for the staff, but also acknowledging that we're all at this table to try and improve the way things have happened in the past. Ngā mihi.
Thank you, Api. Rick?
I would like to move the paper be withdrawn and put on the agenda in 1 month's time, enabling the Chief Executive to have discussions with the Māori Committee.
And the Chair.
And the Chair.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone, would you second that?
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you. All in favour of that?
Mr. Chair, just one other point. I've just dipped into the Auditor General's guidance on local government conflicts of interest, and the participation rule on pecuniary interest doesn't apply to payments set under the Local Government Act. So anyway, there may not be a legal conflict of interest situation here when it does come back onto the table.
We've sort of gone beyond that anyway, Martin. Craig, did you have a point, or were you just voting? Okay, all in favour that we'll just leave that paper for a month. I'm going to solve this within the month. We can do that, Mike?
Yes, happy to.
Okay, all those in favour, aye. Thank you very much. We will move to that later item, so you'll have to get back to the other paper, which on the 2020 meetings. item 7.
Chair, this is a technical paper. I'm quite happy just to move the paper.
There was a technical paper. Who was talking to that? Does anyone want to talk to that? Is Joe? Do you want to? You're on mute, Joe.
Apologies. It is a technical paper. However, I do want to just add in the point, which probably was a little bit of an oversight, and James may have a comment, but there is also the joint committees of Coastal and Transport. Mr. Dolly just reminded me that they may need to continue through the period of through the month in a virtual sense.
Yeah, true. Okay, Rick's moved it. Jeff, did you second that? Did you with that move?
Anyway, I did.
Anyway, did. Do you want to speak, Rick? Anyway? Okay, all those in favour of those recommendations? Aye. Thank you very much. Oh, well, we barreled through that, didn't we? Have a cup of tea shortly. So, information items, move back to your other one. And item 8, CE's verbal report.
Thank you, Chair. Look, the focus of the organisation in supporting the regional civil defence welfare response continues. The civil defence response has moved from a 2-shift model to a single-shift model as of late last week. So it's running 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, but a single shift. And that's reduced the pressure on the regional council and the other councils in the region in terms of providing staff to the Group Emergency Coordination Centre and the wider response. Overall, the welfare response has, I guess, levelled out in terms of got to a degree of equilibrium. The call centres receiving around 300 calls a day. The majority of those are referrals on to other agencies, but there are still food parcels being delivered on a daily basis. There's a bit of a fluctuation through the week of those, but I would say they're averaging around 50 parcels a day or thereabouts. There's also assistance being provided around things like accommodation, clothing, medicines, etc. But they're a smaller number. Food parcels is the largest proportion of response that's being provided to date. So look, that continues. The drought continues obviously as well. No significant rain on the horizon. In fact, the dry weather and mild, very unusually mild temperatures for this time of year are forecast for the week ahead. We've had a little bit of rain over the last week in the mountains, which has brought up river levels in the Ngāraroto, Tukituki, to Taikuri. That has enabled irrigation bans in a few areas to be lifted. So there is some irrigation occurring in those rivers as they've come up. But if we don't get any rain as forecast, we expect that those river levels will soon drop back down and they will be back on ban. The nights are getting cooler and longer, so the growing conditions are rapidly diminishing. So grass is really not showing much recovery. So for the pastoral sector, the outlook is for a dry winter drought, if you like, at this stage, which is a fairly sobering situation. The Esk River itself is also very low and getting closer to minimum flow triggers, which may pose a problem for Panpac, who require a water take for running their pulping operation, and they will be impacted in terms of their production if that drops down in the coming days, which is unfortunate given that forestry is set to resume under level 3 next week. And Panpac, I think, are gearing up to be back in production next week. So we're keeping a close eye on that situation, and we'll give you an update next week as to where that's got to. In terms of the Regional Council's core operations, we are continuing to successfully manage the organisation with the majority of staff working from home. We have a transition to the level 3 plan being finalised today and communicated to staff tomorrow. That plan will attempt to ensure that we have as many staff as possible continuing to work from home as per the level 3 guidance. But for our staff that have field-based roles, we will be looking to deploy them from Tuesday back into the field, and that will enable us to catch up on a lot of work that we've got behind on in the last month, particularly around the council's physical assets. We're developing systems and protocols around our staff, both working in the field and working in our buildings under level 3, and that's just to ensure that we are minimising the health risks of people working in proximity and common assets. So that work's nearly complete, and once it is complete, we'll be moving to develop the transition to level 2 plan. At this stage, we are working on the assumption that the level 3 period is for 2 weeks, which is the initial timetable given by government, and so we need to be ready to transition to level 2 at the end of that 2-week period. Of course, it all remains to be seen whether or not that does occur. I would note that COVID-19 cases nationally are certainly reducing down to very low levels, and there hasn't been a confirmed case in Hawke's Bay for nearly a week now. So we're static at 35 cases in Hawke's Bay, which is where we were at the end of last week. So that's looking particularly promising in terms of the duration of level 3 and our ability to transition to level 2 and start ramping up the organisation's functions again. Under level 3, the council's buildings will remain closed to the public. We're also right now working with the councils across Hawke's Bay around the development of a recovery plan for the Hawke's Bay economy that will have a social and economic dimension to that. So the design of that process is being undertaken this week, and we'll have more to advise council formally next week about that, but we can certainly also have a more informal discussion at our workshop later this morning. In terms of the council's financial situation, the current picture around our current year financial performance is being compiled at present for a workshop with council next Wednesday, and we aim to provide papers with both those numbers and our annual plan situation by the end of the week or early next week, just once that advice has been finalised. We're also assembling a third quarter organisational performance report at the moment, which is to 31 March. Just due to the COVID-19 situation, the development of that report's been delayed a week or so. But that will give councillors an up-to-date picture of the work that has occurred during that third quarter of the financial year, and it'll also come with a financial update on where we're at. So, Chair, that's where we're at in relation to COVID-19, and I'm happy to take any questions from councillors.
Thank you, James. Will.
Thank you, Chair. James, could I just pick up on your point, the ongoing drought, rain in the ranges and the irrigation ban's coming off, but looking at the forecast likely to go back on. So based on all of that, we've had this window of opportunity for those irrigators to be going, and there's been a bit of frustration down here with the, I guess, the lack of measuring and then the process to the measuring of the river flows and then the process to kick that or to lift that ban off. And so you may not be totally over this, but perhaps Liz and Ian might be able to come in here. But I was made aware of river flows picking back up around Friday, and been told that those river flows weren't going to be measured until Monday because staff wouldn't come out on the weekend to measure them and then be able to notify that the flows are above the minimum level and the irrigation ban could come off. So just wondering if someone could comment on that.
So look, I was aware of the issue, but I couldn't give a definitive answer to the Friday, Monday question, so I'll defer to Liz or Ian on that. Looks like Ian's got his hand up.
Liz was first, and then, or do you want to, you choose, Liz or Ian?
So you go, Ian. I'll talk to the measuring point, Chair. So look, staff are working 7 days a week on flows and flow recording. So all of our hydrology staff are still working and have done right through this lockdown period to keep our telemated hydrological networks working, and they've kept that whole system working to 100% of capacity right throughout this lockdown. What the staff did do in response to the changing flow at Red Bridge was go out specifically on the day requested and take a manual measurement at the site just to verify the flows. So that process is working well and effectively and has kept pace with demand right through the lockdown period.
Liz, do you want to add to that?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning. So in response to the manual measurements that were taken at a number of sites across Central Hawke's Bay, where the measure was shown to be above the minimum flow, rather than doing our normal procedure, which is to record it and then advise people the following day, we, a number of staff, both land management staff and compliance staff, phoned the 80 consent holders that were affected straight away to advise them that they could begin irrigating. So we were aware of the urgent need and wanted to get the information out far more quickly.
You happy with that, Will?
Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for James? Sorry, Craig, yes? Craig?
Yeah, just picking up, just reaffirms the lack of water security we have around the regions, north, middle and south. And again, more wind to the sail of us trying to engage with central government to get some of these projects, whatever form they are, across the line, because every single day, not only the environment's hurting, but our families are hurting. But James, there was one thing in particular I wanted to ask you about in the COVID response. You were talking about the mayors and CEOs, I think you said, are getting together on the regional economic development plan. And I just wondered if you could enrich that a little bit with, there's been many versions of that over many years, and what would, given obviously the COVID situation, but how do you think this will be different or have more success than previously well-intentioned or even in play programs to have a regional-wide perspective on our as we rebuild our economy?
Well, Councillor, this is a particularly challenging process to design, because there are such pervasive effects of COVID-19 across our economy and many people responsible for responding to that. We acknowledge that local government are a significant player, but by no means the only player in the landscape. So central government is seized with recovery, and we are advised that they are also developing a recovery plan for New Zealand that will have an expectation of being deployed within regions and at local level through local government, but also directly through central government departments that have a presence within the region. So the recovery program that we're looking at is one in partnership with central government, but also in partnership with tangata whenua, with iwi representation, the post-settlement treaty entity groups, as well as Ngāti Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated. And in addition to that, obviously the business community who are key stakeholders in all of this, and they have representation through a range of industry organisations within the region, some of whom we have close association with, such as Business Hawke's Bay and Hawke's Bay Tourism. So what we're trying to design is a process that enables all of those parties to bring their strengths, knowledge, networks, etc. to the table, and to weave together a plan for Hawke's Bay. There's a trade-off in all of this, and it's around pace. So we recognise that there are impacts of COVID-19 and the drought, which are impacting on families and businesses this very day. So we recognise it's urgent, but we also recognise that there are many people that need to be involved in the development of the plan, and there are some short-term measures and medium-term measures and then longer-term measures that will need to be undertaken. So what the council CEOs and mayors and the chair of the regional council are doing at pace this week is working with some of those key stakeholder groups to design a process which will, I expect, look very much like and possibly use all of the architecture of the Matariki Regional Economic Development Strategy or Economic and Social Development Strategy. And that has all of those key parties already around the table with an existing work program that's now being revisited to focus on COVID-19. So look, it's a reasonably complex landscape, as I say, and we'll keep council well abreast of developments as they come forward.
Neil, Mike, just did you have your hand up, Mike, or are you just adjusting? You didn't, you're fine. Okay, Neil, you did have your hand up.
Yes, just following on from that, James, I'm just interested to know that the local authorities have had produced, see Central Hawke's Bay, for example, producing their own economic development plan or recovery plan. How's it anticipated that each TA will develop its own plan, implement those plans and link into this grand plan? And the other question is there a scope for the regional council to similarly develop, given its own framework and own regional perspective, different elements of a plan? How do you anticipate that working?
So the plans that have been developed to date by each of the territorial authorities have been developed very quickly, and they are an immediate response. And so they encompass some of the sorts of measures that the regional council itself has already undertaken, such as committing to paying our suppliers within 5 working days. Those plans refer to participation in the regional welfare response. They go to managing through the levels, those sorts of things. So those recovery plans, at least the ones that I've seen, have been reasonably near term. And I understand from the chief executives of each of those councils that they see them as living documents that will be updated in the fullness of time. The workshop we have with council later this morning is to discuss the regional council's version of that. And we're looking at how we not only deal with the short term, but what are the medium and longer term actions that the regional council needs to undertake. So our expectation is once that approach has been agreed by council, we'll produce a document for the public, which outlines the steps that we're taking, both in the short term and in the longer term. So, and that will happen at pace following the workshop today. So that's very much our intention, and people will be able to see how we're thinking about things through the regional lens. What I would also say is that while each territorial authority, each district naturally wants to have a recovery plan, many of the issues that Hawke's Bay face straddle our boundaries and will be best dealt with at the regional level. And particularly when we talk about our key industries, many of which carry produce from one part of the region to another for processing and then for exporting, or aggregate production across a range of different districts. So we do believe that working with industry at the regional level will be the most appropriate approach for most of the economic development recovery effort.
Any other questions? Does that satisfy you and Craig and Neil?
It's work in progress and a living discussion, shall we say, because everything's by pace, but we need to define pace and action.
I think that's dead right. Any other questions for James? If not, will someone move to receive his report, please?
Oh, sorry, I've got questions about this significant, that's later, is it? That's not now? Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, the significant organisation, yeah, later. Is that, Martin, you moving to receive James' report? And second by Craig, thank you very much. All those in favour of receiving the report? It's received, thank you very much. Verbal update on regional business partners, COVID. So what is that? What exactly is that, James?
So I think Joe was about to introduce, so maybe I'll just pass to Joe.
Joe.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, James. We I thought it might be useful to have an update from Jenny Brown, who is the local manager of the Regional Business Partner Program, which sits under Hawke's Bay Regional Council. It'll give you a sense of what she is hearing and seeing at the coalface with the business community and the work that that team are doing, both under the additional funding that they've received in response to COVID-19 and the work that they're doing collaboratively with many other agencies. So I'll hand over to Jenny now, who's there on your Zoom. Morning, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. 3 weeks before lockdown, MB announced there was $4 million of funding available for SMEs affected by COVID. And this was to cover business advice on the key areas of business continuity, cash flow and finance, HR and health. The mechanism for this financial support was through the Regional Business Partner Programme. So we're based at the Business Hub. The budget was available was we organised some workshops to enable us to reach one-to-many, and the budget also enabled us to issue voucher funding for businesses to work one-to-one with experts. We took the decision that locally in Hawke's Bay, rather than have large-scale webinars with 900 people on a call and someone talking at businesses, we took the decision to run a range of free practical mini workshops of small groups of maybe 5, 10, 20 people. These were open to businesses of all shapes and sizes, but also not-for-profits as well. Again, these covered 4 main topics I mentioned earlier. To date, we've had 523 participants and some really positive feedback. Regards voucher support with us at Regional Business Partners, we've engaged with 256 businesses to date and issued over 99 vouchers. Just putting that in perspective, that number of businesses is more than our annual KPI, and we've done that over 5 weeks. Between 4 of us, mostly part-time people, we've been calling approximately 4 to 6 people a day to discuss what are their challenges, what are their impacts. We're dealing with businesses that we've never touched before, we've never dealt with before, which is excellent. These are anything from equipment hire places, cafes, bakeries, a lot of tourism businesses, beauty therapists, dentists, as well as our standard manufacturers that we tend to deal with in software businesses. There've been some really interesting discussions. I would have said we've been experiencing since lockdown a cycle of grief. The first 10 days, business owners were just really sad. That is it. I had a couple of people actually crying, men and women, devastated at the loss they're seeing. They're potentially their staff is losing their staff that have been long term with them. Then over the next 10 days, it changed to anger. We had a lot of people very angry and ranting at us because we're seen as central government. But to be honest, by the time we get to the end of the call, it's just clear that they're happy to have had someone to speak to, and we can provide practical ways forward and contacts and advice. Unsurprisingly, the main challenges we were hearing about focused on cash flow and people, be that employment relations, whether you're having to lose staff or whether it was actually for essential services. We had businesses that were getting the MSD subsidy, but the staff just weren't showing up. They either didn't want to put themselves in danger as they viewed it, or they could see everybody else is having a holiday and just would rather stay at home. So we had a lot of very angry business people, and so we linked them into various workshops and expertise that enabled them to have discussions around this and the legalities. Regional Business Partners is much more than money. It's much more than the voucher funding. It's advice. It's driving people to the right resources of whether it's the free workshops, whether it's linking them into the chamber and the chamber connection, whether it's linking them into MSD resources or BHB and Business Hawke's Bay initiatives. Regards collaboration out in the business community, we've linked in with the various hub agencies, also the business associations, the retailer associations, Apple and Pears, Hawke's Bay Wine Growers, to spread the word of what's available, because every business is hurting at those 4 key areas. We have, amongst the hub entities and Hawke's Bay Tourism, we have a weekly or twice weekly call along with Ngāti Kahungunu and MSD, and it's just an update on activity and ensuring that we're collaborating and there's not duplication. From an RBP perspective, we've contracted out some triage work to Business Hawke's Bay, and we work closely with the Chamber. Given last week's recent announcement from MB that there is going to be 25 million released for SMEs for the next 12 months, we have seen a significant upsurge in interest from the business community again, which is again wonderful. We are awaiting to understand the parameters around what that money is for and how we can wisely get it out to the business community. That's me.
Thank you, Jenny. It was a really good report and to let us know just what you guys are up to. And you're obviously doing a huge amount of work with small business, which is really important to our community. Questions? Neil, you had one.
Yes, thanks, Jenny. That's a great report, and good to see so much activity going on in that space. In terms of the engagements you're having, are you collecting any, if you like, intelligence, statistics? What are you doing by way of data? And are we in a position to see that that information at some point? And just to follow on in terms of diving a little deeper into the issues affecting various sectors, have you had any conversations with, for example, the banking sector about what businesses, what's happening with businesses financially going to their bank, and what information they can offer to sort of populate this intelligence network that you seem to be growing?
Yes, firstly, regarding data, yes, we have a significant amount of data. We're currently number crunching. We've got it all into pivot tables to try and interrogate it. We are reporting to Wellington because clearly it's government funding, but we're also linking in with Business Hawke's Bay and putting that information centrally that I believe is going into the Regional Economic Development Recovery Plan. So yes, you will be able to see that data. Regarding the banks, yes, we spoke to them within about the first week or two, and we've got those relationships. The same for insurance companies. We're also hearing lots from business services, so accountants and lawyers. We are going to be updating our workshops to reposition them for the move to level 3, and also focusing on coming out of trying to do business online. So we're going to be providing a lot of doing business digitally and online marketing. We're going to provide some workshops around that.
James, if I could just have a follow-up, Mr. Chair, just to James, can we get line of sight on that data? Obviously, it's going to Hawke's Bay, Business Hawke's Bay, but can we get that sort of information back to Council?
Oh, look, absolutely. I haven't seen it myself, and I did know that Business Hawke's Bay is in the process of collating that at the moment. So I was aware it was going on, but haven't seen the outputs, and we'll make sure that you do when it comes through.
So just internally, given that there is a vast volume of data, we've asked for some spreadsheet support through the finance team to help us better manage that so that it's more easily manipulative in terms of pivot tables, etc. So that's currently underway.
Thank you, Craig.
Thanks. Thanks for the report. Really good, and great to see those numbers going through the roof versus your KPIs. And so we can reset next year's KPIs. No worries. Sounds like it. But put that one aside for a moment. Can you just talk a bit more? Because you've touched on many agencies, but we have the various councils trying to do their bit in this space. There's I can't remember how many thousand SMEs we've got out here in Hawke's Bay, but you've got the Chamber, you've got various agencies, you've got the Apple and Pear guys, etc. You've got the tourism, Hawke's Bay people, etc. How's that? Is there anything that could be improved there of coordination, or is it by and large going well given the circumstances, or anything we should be aware of?
No, yeah, it's interesting. Some organisations just move fast, and I think you have to in this environment. The Chamber have got quite a significant initiative that will be launching, I believe, this evening. They were quick off the ranks just at lockdown to have this Chamber forum, this Chamber connection that was, I don't want to call it a Facebook page, it's much more than that, but it was just businesses talking to businesses, asking questions, getting advice, etc. But they're launching something, an initiative tonight called Be in the Bay, and it's coordinated with Hawke's Bay Tourism and the various retailer associations. And so it's all about Be in the Bay, and it's experience and retail and eating, and it's basically profiling all the businesses, because we know that Hawke's Bay Tourism are looking to do their own campaign as well. So they're all liaising together.
Thank you.
And we're going to have an update from Hamish Saxton next week on their market recovery plan for you.
Jareth?
Yeah, okay, so it sounded a bit funny readjusting the KPIs that Craig mentioned, but that's a reality. At the moment, we've got an H2O drought, but next year, and sitting at the drought committee, being embarrassed about the condition that the Heretaunga Plains were in versus the farming in regards to the drought and how well everything was going. But there is a real concern on the Heretaunga Plains for next year that we'll actually have a labour drought. Although people may think that there will be many people unemployed, but if we had a shortage of plumbers, it wouldn't mean that we could have just anyone, Tom, Dick and Harry, turn up and become a plumber, or being a plumber and actually fix pipes or toilets for that matter. It's the same for the Heretaunga Plains, for our industry. You don't expect people to pick and pack fruit at the same level as we are used to with the number of people that we have, the accommodation we've got available, so forth. With the prediction that we may not have a vaccine for the next 12 months, and borders closed between the Pacific, Australia and New Zealand, and for that matter the rest of the world, it looks like we're on our own in this particular space. And if you take the cohort of people in New Zealand who actually would be capable, and you've heard me say this before, the RSC workers and our New Zealanders who work actually in the seasonal space are the Michael Jordans or the plumbers or the electricians of this world. And we won't, although we may have high unemployment, it doesn't mean actually we can actually apply those people in our industry. So talking about KPIs, that's something we really need to keep in mind, that this is something that may happen. 2021 for the horticulture and viticulture industry is going to be a very scary prospect. I just thought I'll give that thought to you. Hopefully it won't happen, but if you listen to the commentators like Spoonley, he's very well reversed in all of this, and he's got his really finger on the pulse, and he's giving some dire predictions, and government listens to him as an advisor, which is rather fortunate.
Thank you, Jareth. Never let an opportunity to plug our key issues in. Well done. Any other questions for Jenny? So, Jenny, thank you very much.
Sorry.
Oh, Craig, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, just to make a comment though. Just comments, that's the forward looking, but I know, as James said, we've got another discussion later today. But understanding where is the place to represent Hawke's Bay, to bring those issues together, to represent them to Wellington when the time comes, because that's a very contentious issue annually. And, no one knows more about it than us on the ground and the cafes, etc., unless our economy is moving with RSAs or not RSAs, because you can see both the solutions coming. Everyone can get out there and go and pick an apple. Actually, we've got all the RSCs who know how to pick apples, etc. So it's just, again, emphasising the need to have a place of decision-making and action to help drive these medium and long-term strategic decisions for Hawke's Bay. As Jeff has absolutely put, that one of our core industries will be suffering a year down the road if we don't get this right, as well as our smaller SMEs around the place.
Jeff?
Totally agree with Craig. And I think what we need to do, if you understand in my role with Horticulture New Zealand, Mike Chapman, our CEO, is doing a fantastic job on behalf of the industry. And we have figured out, and we've actually had a call for help from central government, is actually we don't want to actually come with problems to them. We actually want to come with solutions. And if we can build those solutions, we actually will have a listening ear and a willing party to work with. If you come with problems and say, this is the problem, you're going to get an outcome that you will never be happy with. So Craig is absolutely on the button. We need to work together and actually find the solutions, work around these solutions, make sure that our community is fully on board and understands why we're having these issues, and that they can become part of the solution as well. So I definitely applaud that, Craig. That's a good comment.
Thank you, guys. James, do you want to... or should I try and attempt to answer Craig's question on where are the forums? I think I'll give it a go for a start. So every second day, the regional leaders meet, the regional mayors, and every subsequent day we meet with all our chief executives. This is one of the subjects which has been right front of the table, because the main reason is our sheep and beef industry is in real trouble. It's going to take a long time for them to get back on. And our horticulture industry is going to be one of the mainstays of our economy, taking tourism out, because that's the other issue that we need to address. And the regional leaders are really conscious about those key industries and how do we keep those key industries going. And there's been a lot of discussion on RSEs. Some of the RSEs don't want to go home. Some do want to go home. And the big risk, of course, is if they go home, will they be able to get back? Because one thing for certain, we need to ensure that our crop, our fruit crop and our veggie crops are harvested next year. So we need to continue discussion, but at the highest levels, this is one of the key priority topics. James, do you want to add to that?
The only thing I'd add is that the Chief Executive of Apples and Pears New Zealand is on the Māori Executive Steering Group, and there's the Regional Commissioner for MSD, and the Ministry for Primary Industries has a senior advisor there as well. And so these issues are well understood, and they're on the table with the right agencies all around the table. So while it's the Matariki construct involves an awful lot of players, so it looks complex, we do have all of the key agencies within central government, local government and industry all there alongside iwi as well. So we've got the right ingredients for strong regional collaboration and pitching to Wellington a strong, clear regional set of priorities. It just takes a little bit of time just to get everybody on the same page and get all that underway, which is the work that's currently going on.
Thank you. Martin, have you got your hand up? I can't yeah, a pen.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity to discuss all of these really important macro issues in our workshop later and ongoing. In the meantime, I'd just really like to thank Jenny on behalf of all of us for the very hard work you've been doing at the coalface of all of this, dealing with those difficult conversations with those sad and angry people who are living the reality of this situation. So thank you on our behalf for all of that work, and I'm sure Rex will be passing that on in a moment.
Yes, I think if there's no more comments, Rick, you're leading forward. Do you?
Well, yeah, just want to make a thing. You talk about the structures and the forums and so on, but I'd just like to add, I think, another really important dimension. And I think it's in line with what Jurif said, which is not just state the problems, but state the solutions. And the other thing I feel which is important about this is I have listened to this discussion for a long time. And let me tell you, some of the rhetoric has been really extreme. I've had to listen to stories about how the sky is going to fall in. I just think that what we do need to have is thorough analysis, measured statements, things which are done weightily and well. And if that's the case, then Wellington will hear the message. If it is extreme language and not measured, then we won't. And that's really the problem. I've encountered this quite often, is that we just don't have the language right and the weight right in the message that we're carrying. I think that's really important, apart from the structures.
Thank you, Rick. So on that note, Jenny, thanks for all the work you're doing. You're doing a great job, and I'm sure councillors all really appreciated that report, and especially the statistical analysis and how many people, small businesses, are coming to you. It's and we all know how desperate it is out there for a small business because their cash flows aren't great at the best of times, and so when they get knocked a couple of weeks, they tend to live from month to month and sometimes week from week. So, they're really suffering, and they're such an important part of our economy, those small businesses, employing 1 and 2 people or just employing themselves. So thanks for the work you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, councillors. We'll move on.
Okay.
Do you want to wind up, Jenny?
Sorry, would you mind if I just respond ever so slightly to Jeff's remarks regarding labour shortage in horticulture and ag tech? Another part of my role pre-COVID is Callaghan Innovation. That's the government's innovation agency. Ag tech sector is one of the key sectors, and there's a lot of work being done about automation, either on the field and in the paddocks, in the orchards, but also in the pack houses as well. So it's just another strand to throw into the bigger picture mix for central government. Is that's one of their key focuses, and they're putting a lot of money and people towards this sector.
Thank you, Jenny, and thanks for joining us in this meeting.
Okay, hey, thanks. Cheers.
Okay, we're going to move to councillor verbal updates. So if we can keep this to 3 minutes, that would be really good. That might be difficult for some councillors, but I'm really keen, and I'm sure our community is really keen to hear from everyone. Martin, you're to my left on my screen. Kick off with you.
You got your egg timer ready, Mr.
No, but I will, eh? Especially with lawyers. Lawyers do get paid by the word.
It's a value billing system, Rick, and the work that we're doing as councillors now is of a very different kind. I don't really have anything significant to add to the conversation. I think the issue of data and actually having an understanding of where this situation, how the situation is affecting our business community, is vital to our economic strategy, rather than just operating in the dark on that. The only thing I really wanted to add to what I said about that last week from the survey of business that I attempted is in the last week I've been, some of you participated in the transport workshop on Monday, and this is a really great opportunity in this current sort of lockdown situation to refresh our thinking about doing more with less in terms of the transportation infrastructure that we've got, using it more efficiently, using it more in more innovative ways so that we've got greater accessibility for our people and communities, and equally more efficient freight connections and road corridors for our business sector. So I encourage anyone who wasn't able to be part of that on Monday to visit the Transport Committee section on Stella, and you'll see the presentations there, and no doubt the video recording would be available online as well. And that's all I wanted to say. I think that's about a minute and a half.
Thank you very much. Mike Paku.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suppose just in regards from iwi's perspective, it's the ongoing welfare stuff, ensuring that our people are actually coping. Depression is one of those things that we're very conscious of, even within my own family. I know that several of my own family have really suffered with the isolation of lockdown. So it's just getting around and making sure that they're having that human contact, even to the point of putting them, breaking a bit of that lockdown protocols and putting them in a vehicle and taking them outside of their bubble, so they understand that the world is still going on, even though they may be locked down. Like everyone else, I suppose for Māori, we're all worried about the employment situation. What does our recovery look like? I suppose the other issue that we've just started to deal with now is the potential for Māori employees to become, I think, disestablished or being replaced by others who have suddenly become unemployed. We wasn't that long ago where we saw Countdown, who had 200 positions, advertised 200 positions, and had 2,000 people apply for those roles, including airline pilots. So it's that type of disestablishment roles that we might have seen filled by those at the lower end of the economic scale, suddenly having to compete with middle class to senior professionals. So that's a real concern for us going forward. Big ups to Civil Defence and working with our four Tai Whenua and establishing, supporting the hubs, community hubs, making sure that we at least getting food out, making contact with our various whānau and identifying those that are vulnerable. I think that's about all. I think I've a minute and a half, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the big minute and a half you and Martin have got. That's good. Thank you very much, Mike. Craig, Rick, I'm going to come to you last.
Thanks, Chair. I'll actually talk about Hawke's Bay tourism, and I might pass to Hinawai to interrupt your flow there a wee bit, Rex. But if everyone wants metrics, just to, again, reinforcing the importance of tourism to our region. So it should be worth about 700 mil a year. In March 2019, international tourism was worth about 13.5 million to Hawke's Bay. And in March 2019, domestic tourism, Kiwis having to look at their own country, was worth about 43 million. So about 57 million total. In April 2020, all of that was under 3 million. So there's an absolute sharp end of how this is hitting our community and our businesses. And it was great for Jenny to pick up on a lot of that in her spiel. But also Hawke's Bay Tourism, they are doing the recovery, response, repair, recovery, and do have a plan to encourage more New Zealanders to come to Hawke's Bay. And we'll see more of that over the coming weeks. The key will be, though, the coordination between the territorial authorities and those organisations that have influence or think they should have influence, or maybe haven't but want to have more influence in tourism in Hawke's Bay. It'll be really interesting in the next week. It's a great opportunity for us to up our game there. And if you don't mind, Rex, I'll just go down a level to Hinawai, because I think she's tourism as well.
Yeah,
it was next on my list anyway, so you're on, Hinawai.
Hey, first of all, I'd just like to thank Jared for all his hard mahi and and being able to collect the produce from all his connections to be able to give to the tai whenua, and also various maraes in the rohe. So thank you, Jareth. Much appreciated. In terms of the tourism industry, I think a lot of businesses have overcome the shock of all of this, but we're still hurting with our overdue invoices owed from other businesses or within the country and outside the country. So there's still a bit of hurt there. The board, as Craig was saying, we're meeting fortnightly. We're going through the response, repair, recovery. They look like 3 buses, which I hope are electric. I'm future thinking here. And those sort of 3 buses will move depending on our alert level. But absolutely, we're coming to a place. We've got a marketing strategy, recovery plan with solutions in them, with some heavy messages that help promote and market Hawke Spain. Because the whole point is to get visitors to visit us, to stay here longer and to return. And those messages have to clearly strengthen our identity. So we're working hard on that, and Hamish can give us an update next week, as well as the webinar he's hosting this afternoon. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you. Anyway, Api.
Greetings, Mr. Chair. I've really got nothing more to add other than to say I have been monitoring activity. Our groups are meeting overall within the Wairau rohe, and Michelle will have a better impression of what's happening on the ground than I do. There's been good communication, good ongoing support, a couple of ongoing issues around PPE, but mostly I'm incredibly impressed by the way that COVID-19 has accelerated the need to improve our comms in between ourselves and with one another. So post-COVID, we should have a more up-to-date database of networks, industries, support people and key personnel within iwi and community to help us really get good buy-in into any recovery programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Api. Charles. Welcome, Charles.
Yeah, a bit technically challenged this morning. But yeah, thanks, Martin, for the workshop the other day. It was great. I love the Timaru example. That was cool. Corner to corner is a really good idea. Just with the hubs and how they're working, yeah, Barna Water seems to be doing a great job getting out to our people. It is a bit sad to see those ones that might fall over. I had an occasion last week to go to an egg farm, poultry farm, and the guy, the people in charge, they obviously said they were having to close because they weren't providing to Countdown or to New World. So and they had about 10 or 12 workers, quite a large operation. We actually took advantage of their good nature by buying 100 trays of eggs with them, so that we could at $3, like 75 or something like that. Our ones out here in Wairau were something like $13 a tray. So we just bought the cheap ones and gave them out to our whānau out here. But the reality is those people are probably closed by now, and they're all out of work. So hopefully they'll find another outlet with Countdown or New World, but chances are they probably won't. I'm still mindful that our hospital has so many beds allocated for COVID, so it's we're not out of the woods yet. There's still a real serious chance of an outbreak, so it's glad to know that facility is there. We've never really had anyone in serious hospitalisation, but the beds are still there ready to go, just in case. We've only ever had something like 30 or 40 ventilators, and if you know that if we get sick, then the ventilators are really the last resort for support. But they're there, so but yeah, so I guess the key word is we're not quite out of the woods, so we still have to do the old stay home, save lives thing. So I see my neighbours. Everyone's picking kiwi fruit here. There's an apple orchard next to me, and they're going to be picking up their produce this week as well. So, yep, and a good thanks to all those other orchardists and horticulturalists that have provided food for a lot of the community groups. So, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Neil?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Essentially, my comments mirror, in a way, to some extent, a variation on the 3 R's. As an organisation, we're looking to essentially reimagine, reset and recover as the 3 R's that we've chosen in a way. And that, by that I mean take the opportunity to if you like, visualise what the future looks like and make some strategic decisions, so resetting and then setting a course of action towards recovery. And I think we've got that opportunity. It's interesting, my impressions of this morning's commentary from the likes of the business sector, the tourism sector, the local authorities and the regional councils, various responses. What I think is we need to do is to look at the opportunities to achieve a great deal more alignment, reimagine what the future could look like. For example, we're treating, we've got tourism out there, we've got business hawks play out there, entities that we've got significant input and stakeholding in. But the world's going to be different. It's going not to be about the old tourism means of encouraging visitors. We've got our events, we've got sports, we've got a workforce issue, we've got education, all of those, if you like, subsets of people coming to the region. There's an opportunity in my mind to bring a strategy together that coordinates that. So where I'm going with that, Mr. Chair, is that perhaps we need to be talking to those stakeholders that we fund to say, look, it's no longer business as usual. Things have to change, and we need to see strategies that that reflect that. And I'm looking forward to how we might facilitate those entities to come back to us with much more reimagined proposals, and so that we can reset and recover.
Thank you, Neil. Michelle? Unmute, Michelle.
The FCO plan's been operating, not including Easter, 6 days a week. Not at full capacity, but it's still operating. Things are going well there. Tātou setting up a firewood program in collaboration with the Kāhui and our forestries that we have ownership of, and that was sort of like a diversification of business for the silviculture industry workers, utilising their skills to work them in a different area, supplying wood for our vulnerable families. The Wairoa Collective continues. Primarily that's Wairoa Tai Whenua, Kaungana Executive Te Whare Māori Tapua and Tātou. The problem has been, when I looked into the other day, there's a lot of many organisations and database and bases and lists, and there's an increase in the vulnerable whānau numbers. Seeing there some of that elderly isolation, and the other issue that's popping up is for solo parents being able to get out and get kai. So yeah, some numbers are dropping through the cracks, so we're trying to locate those. Also of note, there's opportunity for charitable trusts to apply for funding to assist the organisations. Why I'm mentioning this is because our marae, a lot of our marae have closed, and so there's no income there as well, and we need to maintain those, and we have monthly bills maintenance. So at the moment, yesterday I applied to the COGS funding is open, at the moment. And also there's some COVID funding through Eastern and Central Community Trust. So it's an opportunity with a diminished income to just, if you don't have a healthy reserve in place for your marae or charitable trust, it's an opportunity. So something people might want to consider. That's about it. Got it.
Thank you, Michelle. Jareth?
Okay, just a shout out to Martin. Really appreciate that presentation from Darren Davies, and I really would say for everyone just to have a look at it. It's really easy, and the reason why I actually understood it was because it had good pictures in it, drawings and of little stick figures and whatnot, and you could really see what we're actually trying to achieve, and it made a lot of sense. So that's something that all the councils really should be looking at, because there's a lot of shovel-ready in the future projects in the making there. Also to Mike, you're absolutely right. When we come to a certain level of unemployment, I think, and that's what we used to do in Europe, once you get to a certain level of unemployment, then all of a sudden jobs are only available to people in a certain scale. So when you have low unemployment, you take the best workers you can find. But when you actually get to unemployment at the levels that we may be looking at, we should actually be looking at scaling, so that the marginalised people on the bottom end of skill and education won't be missing out, because actually they are the most vulnerable. They have the least savings, the least equity. So that's just, and that's why I shout out. I think you made a very good point there. So far we have in excess of 50 tonnes of produce over the last 3 weeks we've put into the community. And as Henua has said, it's really well received, and we're reaching a lot of people. Once we go to level 3 and 2, there will be a little bit of a reset, because there will be people that will be long-term needy and those who are short-term, and we need to start to identify who they are, so that once again the most marginalised don't get missed out. So we're looking at talking now to our producers to actually put stores of certain products away that can keep, so that we maybe can go the distance rather than go hard short. We can go the distance. So that's what we're talking about. Also, we're dealing extensively with MPI, MFAT, and Immigration New Zealand in regards to what the future will look like. And we have a national labour governance group that actually is a copy of what we have got here in Hawke's Bay, and it feeds in from all the regions around New Zealand what actually is happening around the labour situation. We've been here before. We were here in the late 90s. We were in the GFC. We were here, and now we're here again. So we've actually got good conduits, and we should make sure that we make use of that. But once again, come up with solutions from a region as well, especially in Hawke's Bay, because it's so important to us. So we have all the MPs involved as well, which is so important. Which in the past we're actually lacking. But I think we need to get them involved in this discussion as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Will?
Thanks, Chair. No cases of COVID in Central Hawke's Bay. That's the good news.
0.
As long as you guys stop coming down to our supermarkets.
Yeah.
I know Fossey and his Ford Ranger thinks he can come down and disguise because everyone else drives one. So James summed up the situation pretty well around the lack of rainfall. So we did get some rain early part of April, which kind of gave us a false sense of hope, really. The countryside's turned green, but just not growing now. And as James said, the sort of 10-day forecast is absolutely nothing in the forecast to suggest any rain coming soon. And so everyone has really dropped their heads a bit, I feel, in the last week because of that. Probably a big win locally was Silfing Farm plants operating Easter Friday and Monday, which the farmers really appreciated for the need to continue to keep offloading stock, and there's still a backlog there. And probably just Rex, was good to hear about the regional leader focus on pastoral farming and horticulture. Obviously, for our region, the key to success and recovery for our region, and I guess I just hope we get the same feeling from central government towards those two industries as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Will. Rick? Rick, you need to.
Thank you, Chair. A really significant day today. This is day 28. We've done 4 weeks of a lockdown. And I think that if anybody had written down what they expected New Zealand to be like in 4 weeks' time from the day the lockdown was announced, they would have written a much more gloomy picture than what we've currently got today. And it's a remarkable picture, I think, because of how the Prime Minister describes it, a team of 5 million people. Well, we've had a team of 160,000 people here in Hawke's Bay, and they've done a fantastic job. Yes, there's been the odd person who's gone and done the wrong thing, but they are always those people who are there to prove the general rule correct. I think there's been an unprecedented level of cooperation between the TAs and the region. It's been fantastic to observe. And the civil defence structure we set up has worked pretty well, actually, going from 0 to 100 miles an hour in very different and difficult situations has been a real challenge. I'd like to say we never got everything right all the time, but I think we've got 99% of things right. And so far, the system's ticking along pretty well. We've got, as people have alluded to, partners out there providing welfare assistance in the community, Māori organisations, Red Cross, etc., all integrated, doing the thing, all working smoothly, so it's going very well. We're optimistic that we'll be able to make the transition down to 3 pretty easily. The health system in Hawke's Bay has worked very well. The CBACs are going to remain in place for another 2 weeks, and in the light of experience for that 2 weeks, they'll make another decision where they go. They're contemplating doing what they call now sentinel testing. Used to be just random testing in the community when I was another age, but now we have a fancy word, sentinel testing, saying to seem much more, much more. Anyway, they're working with the Ministry of Health about how they're going to do that. But they've got some ideas about the gaps that they have in their evidence and their science, so they want to be a part of fixing that. People are turning their minds how to get out of this. The government's lined up quite a bit of cash and support. The challenge for us as a region is to actually have a regional response. That's going to be our biggest challenge for the TAs and the Regional Council to agree on a response and work with that. The Matariki seems to me to be the key element of this. There's an existing structure. May need to have a few more personalities put in place to strengthen it, but we have a structure. We now then have to sort of figure out what we're going to do. And I would hope that we learn from this disaster and not try and recreate exactly what we had before, because what we had before exactly has shown it's got some weaknesses. We need to be able to learn and do things differently and do things better. I also hope as we move through the stages of going down the levels, that the gains we've had in cooperation, interoperability, doing things differently, we seize them and keep them and don't let them go back to where they were. A lot of things have worked out really positively here for our communities and how we work as a region, so I'd like to see that. Apart from that, I've got only other thing to add is that the Chair has challenged your fully owned subsidiary, HBRC, to do some work on what sort of role they can play in the in the outcome. We've had a tentative meeting. Blair has given us some thoughts on the piece of paper, and we're going to have another meeting shortly where we'll be inviting people in, economists and so on, to have a look at what we think we can do as an entity to add support to what's going to be done by the TAs, but also some thinking about what we can do to add value and to put ourselves in a good position to have built a stronger Hawke's Bay at the end of this than when we started. So a lot of good work's being done, a lot of good thinking being done. And the last thing I'd say, just as I move around on my push bike around Hastings, I see that the activity has picked up a little bit today, and I can see that people are going in and out of some shops and places, obviously getting set up for Tuesday next week, which will be very gratifying. Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to this. Make no mistake about that.
No, Jeff, you don't come in. Sorry. I just want to wind up by endorsing some of Rick's comments, but especially to thank every single one of you, including our staff, who have just been quite amazing in this. James threw everything into this with his staff, and as he said at one point, we had 50 people directly working on this, and they were incredible. And if you, Rick and I attend a lot of these meetings around the place, Zoom meetings, and if you count the number of people that from the regional council, it is really encouraging that are in each one of these meetings holding pivotal positions. So as a council, councillors and staff, I think we have really contributed to this, and some more than most, but all of you have done something. Down to Charlie buying those eggs, that's fantastic, and distributing around his particular whānau. These are just marvellous things, and as Rick said, we just don't want to lose these wonderful things that we have gained. I just want to tell you that there is a whole lot of Zoom meetings. I've never been on so many Zoom meetings in my life, and over the last period of time, we've had, since the last time we met, we've had 3 civil defence meetings. I've had 4 meetings with the regional mayors, and on top of that, we have another meeting with the regional leaders, including the police and the MPs, and they're all different. But they all lead to the same point. And of course, we've had the webinar. I didn't even know what a webinar was a week ago, but we've had the webinar on economic development and the webinar on, or the workshop on transport, and they've all been interesting. And what is really good about this is everyone's looking at the future. Everyone's saying, well, okay, we're here in this place now. What is the future going to look like? And my special interest, along with Craig and Neil and Rick to a certain extent as well, is the future going forward economically. Because as Mike pointed out, we need to ensure that our people have jobs. And I find that little bit of perspective, Mike, that you gave me is really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, you know, airline pilots lining up to get jobs which otherwise wouldn't apply. And I guess from an interest point of view, they're going to get the jobs. So we need to be really careful that the people who should be having these jobs get these jobs. So I look forward to us going forward. I think there's a really good future for us in Hawke's Bay. I think we'll get out of this. There will be tragedies, of course, business tragedies, personal tragedies, which we're all very conscious of, and we've got to make sure that that is minimised. And there are things going wrong, but my perspective is that as long as every kid has got an apple, and Jerry's making sure that happens, then, and no one's starving and no one's lonely, then that's still our target for the next 2 weeks. But having said that, and getting that right, we need to start getting our minds around what the future is going to look like. So thanks to everybody. I think you've all done a tremendous job. Now, Jeff, did you have something desperate you wanted to say there? Okay. Right. Then we will move on. But thanks for those reports. I'm sure I get a lot out of those reports personally, and I'm sure you all do, but I'm sure our public who is watching do too, and understand just how involved you all are in this process that we're going through now. So I'm really proud of everybody. Thank you very much. We will go on to item 11, the annual plan update. James, are you going to do that?
I'm going to hand over to Jess on this one.
Oh, Jess, sorry, it is Jess again.
Hi, thanks. So this is an information paper, and apologise for, I guess, some of the repetition. A lot of the content of this paper you would have seen in the workshop material that was presented to you last week or the week before. So we wanted to present some of this information in a public paper. And it's really just an update on the timeline and the process going forward in the revisiting of our 2021 annual plan. Just reiterating that we are accounting for changes in some of our key assumptions, and primarily they are our revenue assumptions, taking into consideration the impact on the local community and how we can respond to that through deferral of a rates increase, and incorporating feedback from today's workshop into the annual plan process, and we're bringing that back to you in a workshop next week.
Questions for Jess? No questions? It's a first.
Councillor Curtin, I think, has a question.
Yeah, I mean, Neil was just waiting, Jess.
Yeah, thanks, Jess, and thanks to the team for an excellent effort in pulling this together. It's probably one of the most challenging annual plans you would have come across for some time, given the movable feast, which is a daily event in terms of how you construct it. I just wondered if you could just quickly run over the consultation obligations we have and the legal advice you've given, that you've received, and interpretation of Local Government Act, etc. So can you just précis what's involved should we either adopt the plan as it is or make the changes which we know we're going to have to make? What are the consequences for us in terms of going to the public and consulting?
So the advice we've been given is that the changes in the assumptions, particularly around revenue from our non-rates revenue, are significant or material enough for us to require community consultation. So we've obviously got some options around how we fund that gap, and that's really what we're going to need to take to the community to consult with them on. Even if we continue with the annual plan with the current levels of service, or as the proposed year 3 levels of service from the long-term plan without any significant change, I think it's the team's belief that, you know, the key assumptions that have changed from a revenue point of view are material enough, and we should go ahead and start planning a consultation on that. So we'll talk to you a little more next week about the time frame and I guess the level of detail on what those options are in the workshop setting. Does that answer your question?
Neil, yeah, does it answer your question, Neil? Thank you.
No, that's fine. Thanks very much, Jess. Well done.
Any other questions? James, did you want to make a comment? Or was that just
Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Just I guess picking up on Neil's paper, a flavour that I gleaned from the paper this time a little bit more is that we're not feeling so hemmed in about going to the public and having some form of consultation. I think we're feeling a little bit constrained to operating just within the existing annual plan and looking at postponement or remission. The question I've got is, if we were to maintain existing levels of service but not have a rates increase and just borrow our way through this year, would the borrowing step itself, the fact that we'd be borrowing to fund what the 7% rate increase would otherwise have funded, at least in the interim, will that in itself likely trigger a consultation obligation, given that everything else would remain the same? Would that be the position?
Possibly not. I think actually the biggest changes in our revenue assumptions are actually not on the planned rates increase. The 7.3% rates increase represents about $1.7 million in income. We're expecting greater shortfalls in our other areas of income. So our investment income generally, provides quite a significant portion of our non-rate revenue. And there are some pretty big shifts in that area. So we're looking at, and I think in the paper it sort of details the current high-level expectations are somewhere between $6 and $10 million gap that we're going to need to fund. So yeah, that's really pretty significant in terms of needing to consult and talk to people around what that means.
Thanks, Jess. That's a good answer. Okay, do we have someone to move this, receive this paper,
Happy to
please?
move, Mr. Chair.
Note and receive. Thank you, Neil. Anyway, Neil, do you used to speak?
Just to, again, can you hear me, Mr. Chair? Yeah. Just to again reiterate the tremendous work that's been done here, and Jess and the team, we seem to have gone through some difficult times with staff moving on, etc. But each time we do, we throw up some stars, and just like to compliment Bronda's work that she's done in recent times. So it's, I think what we've got in the organisation is a great deal of, if you like, financial expertise, resilience at the staffing level. So well done to the team there. The comment I would make is that it's clear from the revenue expectations that we're going to have a very substantial gap between what we thought we were going to have and what we actually are likely to end up with, and that's in the vicinity of 8 million. So the actual rate increase itself and the implications of progressing it or not become rather limited in the big scale of things, and that's why, in my view, it's very important to this next step over the next 2 weeks is for the team to pull together with some precision the actual implications, so that when any decision we make is well informed and we've got a full suite of the information in front of us, rather than trying to pick 1 or 2 items out and deal with them in isolation. I think that would be foolhardy. So looking forward to the next couple of weeks in terms of consolidating the draft annual plan.
Thank you. Now, Henry, why do you used to speak?
Yeah, I just want to support Neil's comments and thanking Bronda and her and the options, the considered options, and also at the highlighting of being prudent. I think that's really important, and really considering the generational equity when we make our decisions. So thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's anyone desperately want to speak, I'm just going to move that we receive this paper. All those in favour? Aye. Against? So it's moved. Thank you very much. Okay, so the last item is significant activities. Everyone would have read it. We'll just go straight to questions on it. Craig?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, James. Page 27 of your report. No, it's not. It's page somewhere in there. You're talking about the Waira PGF project. Sorry, it's page 30, and you say there's been a PGF application submitted, and now that the business case is completed, can you confirm to us what that project will mean for the council in any way, shape or form, financials, underwriting, resources or anything? I mean, I'm sure it's a great project, but I actually don't know anything other than it's got to this stage in your report and there is a business case. So from the council's business case perspective, will we need to be making any decisions or allocate resources to it, or if you could just give a bit more info, please?
So there's no resourcing commitment required from council for the next stages. At this stage, there are some quantums of resource required to advance the project that are being put forward to central government, but there'll be choices for various parties, including the Wairoa District Council, Tata Ō Te Wairoa and Ngāti Pahuera, who have been involved with the preparation of the business case, as well as ourselves, as to what further resourcing goes in. So that lies ahead. What I suggest is that we circulate a copy of the business case to all councillors for your information. The Provincial Growth Fund application is in preparation as we speak, and that is planned for lodging, just so you all understand what the project involves. And then there will need to be some further discussion at a later date about whether there's any further resourcing required from the Regional Council.
So that would be great to share that, and anything else which has a business plan sitting around it would be great. Thanks very much.
Sure. This is the only one on the go at the moment, but we'll certainly make sure it's circulated.
Perhaps I just add to that, Craig. From my perspective, and I've been there from the beginning, there are no guarantees, no promises being made from the Regional Council, and I don't expect any further financial commitment from the Regional Council other than we help to get the plan up done. I don't expect any intervention from us at all, at any level. Okay.
Thank you.
Michelle?
Can I just ask, was that a Pāhewera project or a Wairoa Town project?
It is a partnership between Wairoa District Council, the Regional Council, Tautau Wairoa, and Parawera.
Okay. Okay. Well, where's the project? Is it in Wairoa? Is it to do?
It will be. We're hopeful that it will raise development in Parawera, so from Mohaka through to Wairoa. So we're hoping that it will be a centralised horticulture hub involving both those ruis.
I don't know anything about it. Yeah. Okay then. I wouldn't mind a bit of information on that since it's in my backyard. I presumed it was the Ohuia project.
No, it's not Ohuia.
Now I'm hearing differently.
Well, Leon attends is one of the governance directors, and your new guy Lewis has been fully informed. So we're dealing with the treaty claimant group, and I would just imagine that, and Charlie attends our meetings as well. I just imagine that they would be informing the local community.
Yeah, you would think I'm chairman of the Kāhui of Tātou Tātou, and I have this the first time I've heard of it. So, kia ora.
Need to talk to Leon.
Lewis.
And Lewis. Did you have your hand up, Petty?
Just through the chair, Michelle, I can update you on that offline.
Okay. Any other activities? Good. Okay, then we'll have someone to receive the activities report. Martin, and second, Rick. Martin, you wish to speak? Rick? Any other speakers? You wish to speak, Michelle?
So, I just wanted to give an update about the wastewater consent for Wairoa. So, we did our
Could you just hold on that, because it's we'll just move the activities report.
Okay.
So, then we'll come to you as
just an update.
There's an update. Okay. All those in favour? Aye. We received that report. So discussions of minor items not on the agenda. We don't have any, but we have a late item from Michelle.
Oh no, it was part of the what is it? The regulation consent. It was.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, I got you wrong there. So
yeah.
What was yours?
So that's why I was trying to jump it. I don't have my caught asleep for a second. So yeah, we had our Zoom hui. It was coordinated by the Niki environmental staff and Tangata Whenua submitters via Zoom, and to discuss the consent conditions. We sent our final comments to both Tania Diak and Hamish Lowe. There's a Wairoa District Council environmental consultant for the consent. On their mutually agreed date of the 17th, was last week. Wairoa District Council have offered an extra week to this Friday to any other submitters that may want to get in some additional comments, and they, as far as I understand, they should be in contact with the Regional Council by the 1st of May. So as far as we were concerned, we'd honoured our agreement with them. And kia ora, that was all.
Kia ora, Michelle. So there are no other items, minor items. So with that, that is the end of our meeting, and we're going to go into a workshop. So it's going to give you a little bit of time to have a smoko break. So Heniwai, would you please, since you opened us, would you please close our meeting for us?
Kia ora tātou. We will go to our grey cards to kia tau. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou ariki a ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Āmene.
Okay.
Thank you, Heniwai. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And I think we're going to get used to these Zoom meetings. We won't want to go back and get in our cars ever again. So pause now for 10 minutes, or do you need 15, Mr. Deputy Chair, for a cup of tea?
I think we go out, don't we? Don't we leave this and come back in?
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yes, we do.